day, you're welcome to today's edition of Editorials, the broadcast from Canada. My name is Sandra Asante. Today we're looking at two fused things in Ethiopia. First, we look at Ethiopia air raid on Tigray, killing 10 people, including children, as well as the question for the day. Why does PM have a problem with wheat aid? So don't go anywhere, I'll be back after the break. You're welcome back from the break. We'll start off with the killing of people in Ethiopia. So Ethiopia's military has carried out an air raid on the capital of the war-torn Tigray region that a hospital official said killed 10 people and wounded more than 20 people. The government said the attack on Thursday, the latest in the campaign of the air bombardment, hit a factory in Mekelle used by the Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLF. The Air Force destroyed the second part of the Mesfin Industrial Engineering. The facility was used by the TPLF for maintaining its military equipment. Government spokesperson Salimawait Kasa said. Dr. Hayilom Kabede, research director at the Mekelle's Eye Referral Hospital, said a residential area was hit and casualties were inflicted. The death toll reached 10. Kabede said, up from this earlier count, that puts the number of dead at 6 and listed 21 people as injured. He predicted the death toll would rise because medical care is severely constrained. The Tigray Communications Affairs Bureau, a TPLF-linked information channel, also reported casualties and said the strike had hit a residential area. Nuhuseni Bele, a Tigray spokesman, denied the air raid hit the military target and said it struck a civilian resident. 3 children were among the dead, he said. Earlier, TPLF spokesman Getachew Reda confirmed the attack on Mekelle and said the force's defense units were engaging an enemy jet. A doctor told the Reuters news agency that the attack hit the residential Kebele 5 area. Photos from the scene appear to show rescuers pulling bodies from the debris. Tigrayan television screened pictures of Red Cross workers at the site of collapsed brick structures with corrugated iron roofs. Blankets and kettles can be seen among the blood-stained wreckage. At one point, gloved volunteers hastily cover a body part with a sheet. When asked by Reuters for a comment on the alleged civilian deaths, government spokesperson Legesa Tulu replied in a text message, "There is not any intended and deliberate harm on civilians and their properties. The airstrike successfully hit its targets." Much of northern Ethiopia is under a communication blackout and access for journalists is restricted, making battlefield claims difficult to verify independently. But Tigray was pounded by earlier daily aerial bombardments last week as the military stepped up its use of air power in the year-long war against TPLF. Ethiopia's government has asserted that the latest air raid has been confined to military targets, but Tigrayan forces have asserted that civilian facilities, including factories and a clinic, has been targeted instead. The government said the facilities bombed in northern and western Tigray were military in nature, aiding the TPLF, the former governing party in the region. The United Nations said 2 attacks on Mekelle on October 18th killed 3 children and wounded several other people. Another person died in the later attack. Control of the skies, along with superior manpower, is one of the fewer remaining areas where the federal government holds a military advantage over the forces. But the bombing have drawn international censure. The disrupted UN's access to the region, where an estimated 400,000 people face famine-like conditions under a de facto aid blockade. Meanwhile, fighting continues in Ethiopia's neighboring Amhara region after the government of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed launched a ground offensive there earlier this month despite international calls for a ceasefire. Tigray erupted into conflict in November 2020 after Ahmed sent troops to topple the TPLF. The 2019 Nobel Peace laureate said the move came in response to TPLF attacks on the army camps and promised to swift victory, but late June, the forces had regrouped and retaken most of the regions, including Mekelle. Now let's look at the problem with the wheat aid. So Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has claimed that most of the country's problems, including the importing of diseases, stemmed from foreign wheat aid. Ethiopia's problem is wheat aid. With wheat aid comes diseases, said Abiy Ahmed. If we stop it, many of the problems will be solved. So is Mr. Abiy right to associate wheat import with diseases and other challenges facing Ethiopia? I'm surprised. So Ethiopia's growing dependence on what wheat has not traditionally been a staple group in Ethiopia. Ethiopia's growing dependence on wheat has not traditionally been a staple crop in Ethiopia, but it has been growing in the popularity in recent years, especially in urban areas. It is now the largest producer of wheat in the sub-Saharan Africa, but production has consistently fallen short of demand. The country has also been facing food shortages and drought, with millions of people requiring food aid. To meet this shortfall, Ethiopia is currently importing about 1/4 of its wheat and about 1/4 of what that arrives as food aid. Much of it comes from the United States. Can wheat imports bring disease? Mr. Abiy was speaking to farmers in the Oromia region when he referred to diseases being brought in with imported wheat. One of the most problematic diseases for farmers in Ethiopia has been wheat rust, caused by fungus carried by the wind. An outbreak in 2010 affected 30% of the cultivated areas and reduced production by more than 15%. The most effective method of controlling wheat rust is by breeding resistant wheat cultivars, but new strains of the fungus pose a continuing threat. In 2013, the new variant of stem rust was able to attack a previous resistant variety of wheat known as the Digalu, leading to a widespread losses. A study published in 2017 shows this particular fungus variant probably originated from Yemen before crossing over airborne into Ethiopia. It, however, does not rule out that it may have also come from another Middle East or Eastern African countries. It is certainly possible that cross diseases and pests can enter the country through aid or imported crops, says Wulitao Tadesse Degu, that is an expert in wheat production at the International Center for Agricultural Research in the dry areas. This is particularly likely in countries where the quarantine facilities are weak. There have been claims that many of the aggressive weeds and pests prevailing currently in the country were imported, he said. Our rivers and lakes, our farmlands and rangelands are threatened by aggressive weeds which didn't exist before in Ethiopia. Experts have told BBC that any grain coming into the country needs to be carefully checked to ensure it is free from diseases. Globally, there are instances where diseases have spread through import. One example of wheat rust, which is seed-borne and recently moved from South America to Bangladesh and Zambia through grain trade. For wheat rust, however, which is wing-borne as opposed to being carried by seed, it is not always the case that new strains come from outside the region. There is evidence that some new crust strains have been involved within the East African regions as much as some have come from elsewhere. The U.S. International Development Agency told the BBC that U.S. food assistance is subjected to stringent quality control to meet all international standards. It added the aid complies with local food safety and quality regulations. So can Ethiopia grow more wheat? Most of the wheat in Ethiopia is grown by smallholder farmers, With increased mechanization, yields have doubled over 15 years according to government data. However, productivity remains low and output still falls short of demand. Traditionally, Ethiopia has been growing wheat in the highlands and depending on rain. It is now supplementing that by growing wheat in the lower lands, which are often drier through irrigation. The government is also encouraging cluster farming, mechanization, and subsidizing and distributing inputs such as fertilizer and high-quality seed. Through this, Ethiopia is pushing to fully stop importing wheat by 2023. It is very realistic and achievable goal since we are irrigable 500,000 hectares of land which is currently cultivated. This is what Mr. Tadasa said. This is where I end today's editorials. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Sandra Asante. You should have an amazing day.